The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Well, welcome to Until Now with Rosie Pekar. You're listening on W4CY Radio. If you want to join the live chat, go on over and ask your questions. Today we're going to be talking about backdrop people. And if you actually heard that intro music of Born to Be Alive as I've just heard it, I cracked up laughing because it was all over the place. If it's re-edited and you listen to this later, you may not get what I mean, but it was going super fast, super slow, speeding back up again in between. And I thought, that's pretty much the energy that I've been running on the last couple of weeks, all over the place. And that energy is not unique to me. It's sort of a human dynamic that I think we've all laid claim to at different stages in our life, where we try to be all things to many people and many situations. It's you try to tackle one day at a time and several come and get you all at once. And that's sort of been my life the last couple of weeks. I had to unexpectedly move house, relocate. The owner decided to move back in. And for those listening, you've worked out I'm not in America, I'm in Australia. And over here, the rental market's pretty extreme at the moment, so you could guarantee any listing there was going to be a lot of people present, all for the one property, and the prices were, reaching or bordering on extreme prices. And at that time, whilst looking at these different properties, we got run over by another visitor from another country in a Hi-Ace with their vehicle that didn't realise they were on the wrong side of the road and cleaned us up. So there was a few different incidents at the one time, and all whilst, being a mother for my child, a single mother, keeping that face of all's good, honey, everything's perfectly fine. No stress here. Nothing to see here. It's a bit like my days back as a police officer. Keep it moving, people. Nothing to see here. And that's what it was like with my son. It was like, do you know where we're going to live, Mum? And I had no idea where we were going to live. But it's like, it's good, honey. We always land on our feet. Everything always turns out. Now, many of us, I'm not alone in this experience, many of us have lived lives at times where we've had those experiences occur and we just don't have the answers in the moment. The key is not getting caught up on them. And that's what I've discovered, because now it's easy to talk about because it's post the event. We have landed on our feet. I'm looking at my beautiful view overlooking the water as I'm talking with you right now, in a safe, secure place. And yeah, as one listener has asked, are things hard when moving? My only answer, hell yeah. Hard is a severe understatement. It took 7 hours with the removalists, and I had 4 guys, and we were a 2-story walk up to start with, and then went to a 5-story at least with a lift at the other end. And again, I was just mentioning to Delightful Rebel, the engineer, recently, saying that no wonder people give so much to charity. They do that so they don't have to friggin' move the stuff. And that's exactly what I would do on the next occasion. And I've done it previously in the past. I've given away 2 full house loads of all my property only because of the fact that I didn't want to be moving it and I was starting with a clean slate. Now, that's not available to a lot of us, and it wasn't available to me at this time. because at this time I didn't have money to throw as the answer to my problems. And many of us are in similar situations where money is big for most of us. It is a big issue. It causes stress levels to raise. It's a high cause of suicide amongst men, as well as, again, women getting depressed or overspending, trying to keep up with the Joneses, or is the saying that we use in Australia. And it simply means, seeing what someone else has got and trying to copy that, buying the latest designer, whatever's sold by whatever celebrity is being followed. I'm not that type of female. I've never been a designer style. I'm into comfort. I'm into adventure. I'm into exploration. And if anything, I would choose to spend my money on home environment, so that my space when I'm not traveling is an easy, peaceful place. And some have written here, money is the root of evil. I don't think money itself is the root of evil, because money to me is just a form of energy. And it's like saying energy is the root of all evil. No, energy can be used to burn. It can be used to heat. It depends on the use of it, and that's up to each individual. So today's topic, what I wanted to really focus on, is how we get caught up on the things that cause us to not only get really stressed out, but also open that doorway to depression to get in. And you yourself, or those around you, you might know people like this, that continually reiterate on problems. Now, I don't mind, problems coming in the door, so long as I've got a way to show them the back door. And the people coming in the door often pose bigger than the problems that they're bringing in. And I call these people backdrop people. And it's not my term that I coined. It actually came from Dolores Cannon, and I kind of pronounced it incorrectly, so don't hold me to that. I'll blame it on the Australian accent. She's an English lady who's now passed away, but she's written many books, and she deals with a lot of people used to doing past life regressions, and she would pick up where anxieties or stresses or current problems may have existed in previous life experiences, and in touching upon it, they were able to, once they identified it, be able to release it. And she received information during one of these regression sessions with a patient about what was called backdrop people. And backdrop people are those people that come into your life, and for some reason we get caught up on what they're bringing in and we make them center stage. Now, backdrop people can be your exes. Backdrop people may even be your current partner. Backdrop people may be your in-laws. Backdrop people can be your outlaws. They can be authorities in any institution, any industry, anywhere at all. Now, how do we identify these backdrop people? Well, the way I've identified so far is they often seem soulless or compassionless or lack empathy, lack a base level of human understanding and kindness, because most people I've found come from a base level of wanting to be kind, wanting to be generous, uplifting others. It is not a natural desire to want to depress, squash, or take advantage of others. That can be a learned condition. However, those backdrop people come in, and they come in to help us with contrast, to understand that our life has many choices and many options, and we have many abilities and many skills and many talents, and it's us who chooses the direction in which we take our life and our journey and our travels by our focus. And if the backdrop people serve to put us off focus, and I had a wonderful backdrop person in my life, and I use that term wonderful very, very loosely, because I would actually probably use many other terms in the dictionary, and none of them come under the definition of wonderful. But this backdrop person liked to denigrate, liked to demoralize, liked to degrade and demean all the worthy projects that thus far in my life, which is why I titled the program Until Now, is because we all know what we know until now. There's always this now moment that we learn more. When we know better, we do better. We're forever expanding upon who we are. And this wonderful backdrop person, I often made centre stage in my own life, and I made them centre stage by focusing on their need first. It was a previous partner, and a previous partner who I kept thinking every problem was my problem, instead of recognising that I had my own value, my own worth, my own life, more or less. And instead, I made their life the priority. And that's what we can do. We can make, for example, one incident that occurred to me while I was in America, which was a negative experience. We had our bank accounts all emptied, and so we had no finances. And at the time, I took my son had just gotten out of critical care in the hospital, and I wanted to take him to the park just to enjoy being outdoors. And I didn't have the quarter for a parking meter. And in that one moment, because I was running on such negative, heavy energy and woe is me, and how could all this be happening to me at this one time, and life is so terrible and things are so harsh. And of course, I drew in the one parking inspector who would come to that park. So I'd been at that park many, many days before and never seen a parking inspector. Of course, the parking inspector found my vehicle in the park and was writing a ticket on it. And so I've raced up to, and I'm ready to burst at this time because I'm being overwhelmed by life circumstances. And this was only a ticket for not having 25 cents. I don't even know what the ticket amount was for. It might have been $15, $20. This is a few years back. And I burst into tears. Now, the poor parking inspector would be thinking, well, that's a bit of a dramatisation, sweetheart. It's just a parking ticket. But it wasn't just a parking ticket. It was the culmination, or as we say, the straw that broke the camel's back. It was that final thing that made me feel such a failure and so inadequate in life that I couldn't even afford the quarter to put in the meter to park my car for my son to have a play. So I did not feel like that thriver, like that successful provider, like that, the wonderful endorsements that flow my way previously. None of that mattered in that moment. And the same for many of us walking the planet. We've all amassed so many experiences and done so much great work and great interactions with lots of other people, but we get caught up on some one little incident. It could be dealing with someone at your roads and traffic authority. It could be dealing with someone in a queue to get a phone service fixed up. It could be your IT provider. It could be absolutely anybody whatsoever that we get caught up on. And now I'm just going to read some of these questions so I can answer at the same time. How can you move the things through from one door to the other with ease? Well, we're going to get to that, and that's going to be with our focus. And how do you take centre stage in your own life? Going to get back to that with focus. Don't you think some people thrive on draining the life from others? Yes, I think certainly there are those, we call them drama queens, and maybe you do too, drama kings and drama queens, that's exactly what their life energy is. It's being able to take the life energy out from others. And, they're a bit of an energy vampire in that regard. Why do we push ourselves to the limit before we recognise the issues? Again, ingrained, indoctrinated. And do you think karma has a play in things? Well, let me try and sum those things up, and I'll try and slow down my talking. You can tell I get passionate and I get excited about these topics, and I really want to get it out there. And then all of a sudden, my own brain can't even keep up with my mouth, unlike some other people that get lost in their own thoughts, and for them it's very unfamiliar territory. And I've met a few of those. So for us, it's understanding, first off, that we determine our worth and value. We came here to be centre stage in our own lives. We can only live our own life. We can't live another life. We get from birth spoon-fed a diet of information and indoctrination. We get told how we should be, how we should look, what we should be doing, who we should be doing with. Much information comes through to us unfiltered, unfettered. And unfortunately, many of the people that are the suppliers of this information to us aren't thriving or doing a stellar job in their own lives. And they're doing the best that they know with what they have. However, there is always around us those that know a lot better. And if it is a backdrop person who's spoon feeding you, and I know not personally myself, but some of my close friends have had family members that are what we would call these backdrop people that like to steal the joy out of any day, like to drain the life out of most experiences, and like to make a bigger problem than where any existed whatsoever. And one of these people I'm thinking of, the person in particular, was their mother. And, you know, we hold our parents in very high esteem and our family members in high esteem. However, understanding and becoming aware that, you know, if it's creating a lot of pain and a lot of difficulty and a lot of disharmony in our lives, we are making that individual center stage. And that is not their role. Their role is as a backdrop person. They are like when you watch a movie, you see all the backdrop people that creates a scene, that gives us context and understanding. Without those backdrop people, it would be plain and ineffective and ordinary. So backdrop people serve a great purpose in their role in the back. So let's just remind ourselves, you know, there's a saying I've seen on Facebook saying, you know, not my circus, not my monkeys. Well, for me, I go, you know, they're my backdrop, not my forefront, they're my backdrop, not my forefront, they're my backdrop. So I realize when a problem or a person acting as such a problem is present in my life, to put them to the back again. What center stage is myself? Now, how do we refocus this? How do we choose to uplift instead of be depressed? Well, again, the circumstances recently with the, you know, move, having to relocate at very short notice, and then in a market where, you know, it was highly competitive in order to find a place, and then the days were ticking off that I had to be out by, and I'm thinking, oh my God, am I going to be in my car with my son? And I thought, well, at least it's still doable. We have a car. Because unlike some other people, my family is all deceased. So I don't have mum and dad to knock on their door, or, you know, some relatives nearby that, you know, I can contact and say, help us out in a pinch. And most of my friends live within a 17-hour trip away. So, you know, long distance. So the question I'm asked is, how much stress was on you? For me, it's probably one of the highest levels of stress that I've had for quite a period of time. And I've experienced a fair bit to this point. You know, those that are unaware, I was a police officer in investigations over 16 years. I've dealt a lot with lots of people that creates a lot of stress in my life. I came from a domestic violence situation as a child. I've helped out in Bande Aceh after the tsunami disaster where 200,000 lives were lost, and dealt with a lot of people with grief and overwhelmment. Myself personally, having lost, I stopped counting after, you know, 20 was the numbers, and I lost 2 very close friends just last year. The stress that was on me, again, it's the case of the straw that breaks the camel's back. The incidence itself, you could look at and you go, that's not such a big deal. It's not such a big deal when all the other incidents previously have been dealt with. But for many of us, we don't deal with all the incidents as they occur. We just file it, or we store it somewhere inside us, and it's built up upon. So the next time we have an interaction, for example, with a backdrop person, all of a sudden we're irrational to what the actual experience is in the moment. So the moment itself, or the experience, might be what we'd call insignificant or minor, yet our reaction to it is extreme. And it's extreme because we're taking all this other stuff like a pressure cooker inside of us into that moment. We don't leave our problems behind, we bring them with us. And yeah, as one listener has put a question in, if you want to ask any more questions, come over to W4CY and join the chat live. Let me just see here. There are different kinds of stress, some that hurts more than others, most certainly. And, you know, there's physical stress when your body's physically in pain, which mine became, I copped the flu. There's mental stress, which is where we measure ourselves up against where we think we should be, whether we're succeeding or not doing as well as we think. There's the emotional stress of where we regurgitate all that's not going so well in our lives. So we have And then the spiritual stress, whether we have a belief system or a structure that supports us at these times. Fortunately, I have that. And it's something I've grown to rely upon, that, my mere mortal self in any circumstance is like that little ant wandering around in the universe, very small and insignificant. However, my most powerful ally I have is that energy of all that is. And there's so many people on this planet that have different names for that. You can call it God, you can call it Allah, you can call it Buddha, I'm quite sure that energy does not have the human traits of personalizing and being offended if an incorrect name is given. However, that energy that is in all, that supports all and aids all, has certainly aided me through this time. And it's kept my awareness so that mentally and emotionally I could keep my barometer on track towards well-being, which is what my end focus, my intention was. So I always have the end result in mind. And that's where, when we have backdrop people in our lives, the only way we get our power back, because that's what they do. They distract us, they disarm us, and all of a sudden we're giving our power over to them. And all of a sudden they are the ones more powerful in the moment and we are not. And we keep feeding that power to them. The more we think about them, the more we talk about them and the problems they present, the more power is fed to them. The only way, and that depresses us, it heightens them, it enlivens them. But for us personally, we've taken ourselves away from being uplifted and allowed ourselves in that instance to become more and more and more depressed. So uplifting ourselves is not with the things. People think, oh, I'll go out and buy that nice handbag, those new shoes, that flash car, get that holiday. That can uplift us temporarily. However, for a longer lasting effect of upliftment, it's an internal job, and we get uplifted by releasing and letting go those things that serve as stress and distress that we all encounter in our lives. And I used money as the key issue today, because most of us experience at some point in our life challenges in respect of whether we have enough, or we haven't had it protected, or we haven't looked after it, or whatever the issue may be in respect of it. But the pain that we experience in moments is not so much the experience and the events, like whether I found a home or not, whether I got my car repaired or not, and whether I was able to pay for that parking meter with the parking inspector or not, was not the cause of my pain and suffering. The cause of my pain and suffering was the thoughts in my head that somehow I found myself inadequate, that somehow I found myself as less than what I deemed I should be. And that inconsistency with what is true is what causes the pain, because we've got like our greater self, and our greater self is always in communion with our mortal self. And when we think thoughts that are less than what we truly are, the pain is felt, and the pain is very real from our greater self. So it's that attempting to separate from our truth. And our truth is that, we have ways and means and abilities beyond what we've even begun to tap into in this life yet. And we lose our value. Actually, let me rephrase that. We can't ever lose our value, because our value is not something that can be given or taken. It's inherent. We have it full stop at all times. But we feel as if we lose our value. And men do this when they change careers and positions, as well as some women. I know I did it myself, when I was in a position to lead leaders and train and coach leaders around the globe, yet locally I wasn't qualified to even sit with the elderly in a voluntary capacity. And that threw me through a loop for the day. It was like, wow, I can be entrusted with so many, great individuals around the world, yet these wonderful, great elderly that are nearby that I could assist with my time, I'm not permitted to go near because of a law. So, yes, it caused doubt in my own mind. And doubt is a dream killer. Doubt is a killer of all that we hold true internally. So I had a belief in that somehow I was less than, and this caused hurt for me. And hurt people. You know, road rage is on the increase, and the reason why is because people have had an interaction with someone else that they're bought into the belief of someone else that they're spewing in the moment. You think of any domestic argument, you know, two people during an argument, two loved ones, they're no longer acting like loved ones, they're acting like two hated ones, and they spew forth such what I call verbal vomit. And I heard years upon years upon years of it, from neighbours disputes to domestic disputes, all as a police officer. And I would look at the people and think, really? You know, and this is the people saying that they love each other. What are these words of love? Where are these actions of love? They're not evident in any of these moments. And the reason that they're not evident in any of those moments is because they're not in the minds of the people at the moment. What's in the minds of the people is the hurt they are feeling, that separation from their self, that inconsistency, that they feel that they're not their genuine, who they truly are. So how we reset this focus, and with myself, is identifying what are my ideals. And ideals are what I call my priorities for a life well lived. My priorities for a life well lived included, number one up the top was peace. So I wanted peace within my body, peace within my brain, peace within my mind. So if I was getting caught up in thinking all these thoughts of how I'm inadequate, I'm not being true to my ideal. It is not supporting my ideal of being at peace. The same as security, stability, ease, enjoyment, well-being, and joy. They are all, for me, key values. Some people might call them virtues. Some people might call them ideas. Altogether, they make up the integrity, the whole of what it is that I want in life. Everything else is just the essence of it that brings it to you. So, for example, when I travel somewhere, the fact that I enjoy ease, if I'm going to start screaming that someone's cut me off or someone's, you know, doing what I perceive to be the wrong thing, I'm no longer in a state of ease and a state of peace. So I've given my power over to that backdrop person. I've made them center stage in that moment, and I am now distressed, and I'm now running on a totally different energy. I've lost that value in my life. That value is always at my command. That is always my choice. And yes, as one listener has asked, rage is a bad feeling, but is easily fueled. It is easily fueled when we haven't set our barometer, our course, our direction and intention of where it is we say that we want our lives to be. And many people I've discovered, and I know this is a fact because I work presenting, doing corporate events as well as doing within work-safe events and within the prison systems for staff, etc., about helping them with emotional resilience and intelligence. And one thing I discover is people have not set where they want to go in life, what they want out of life. And if we haven't set it, then people are surprised with the results that they end up with. But it's a bit like, you know, going out on a motorboat into the ocean and just, you know, willy-nilly stirring the rudder all over the place when you haven't plotted a course or got GPS coordinates or anything to help you navigate along the way. So if we don't have an internal navigational system that's set up saying these are the points or the places that I want to be traveling, which includes peace, which includes security, which includes well-being, which includes ease, which includes effortlessness, which includes joy, which includes happiness, which includes love, which includes, you know, abundant, whatever it is, all those things that are important to an individual. I'm saying the things that are important to me. Individually, you might think of other things that pop into your mind straight away that are really important. For some people, it's passion. You know, if you took me back 20 years ago, that was my main driver. I was so passionate on so many topics. I would steamroller over anybody in order to be able to get to them. You know, I met with a young gentleman only yesterday who's doing locally the very first speech festival, and it's a series of TED Talks all in one day, and has asked if I would be one of the main speakers on this program. And I loved his enthusiasm and his energy and his positive expectation of all that he thought he would have involved and succeeding with it. And I said, 20 years ago, I would have been working 4 jobs all at the one time in order to make that all happen. I said, whereas these days, 30 plus years later, I have a different mindset and I go about my business with a different take, and I get results, albeit differently. However, they match my ideals of what it is that I say I want. And I had to laugh. He's a young 20-something, corporate up and coming. And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, Rosie," he said, "when I'm over 50, I want to be just like you." And I laughed and I looked at him and I said, no, you don't. You don't look any good in a dress. I thought this young man, it was so sweet that, he would want to be just like me in another 30 plus years. I'm not sure whether that's a compliment or a negative. But change is inevitable. It's something we can expect in our lives, unless, of course, you're using a vending machine, then you're unlikely to ever get it back. But change is a constant. And with ourselves, it's becoming aware, is that change heading us in the direction of what it is that we say we want? So I had the unexpected news of that my location of where I live was going to change, whether I liked it or not. And I really did enjoy and love where I was living, as did my young son. However, it was going to change. So I had 2 choices. One of my girlfriends said to me, "I don't know how you're doing this so easily." And I thought, again, that is a perception, because on the inside, there is that inner turmoil. Let's be honest, you get caught up in thinking the man-made thoughts, and it's a challenge to redirect to new territory, thoughts that I'm not used to thinking in stressful circumstances. However, I chose to focus on well-being, to focus on all the other past times in my life that I've had challenges or unexpected change thrust upon me, and I was able to pull a rabbit out of the hat. I was able to land on my feet. And I just remembered those times, and I remember how life changes on a dime. For many years I used to work with the long-term injured or chronically impaired, or those that had experienced unexpected accidents that altered their lives permanently, such as losing a limb. And it reminded me every day that I work with these people how fast life can change so completely in an instant. And for me, I still had all my faculties. So I went through my list of all the things that I was grateful for. I did have, all my limbs. I had all my senses to be able to use. I still had my intelligence and my wits, albeit my intelligence was, not as operational as it should have been at the time. So they're things that we take as a given on every day. We take it as a given that we can get out of our own beds and we can go to our own toilet by ourselves. For many other people, that's not a given. I watched some people recently pushing, their nana down to the beach. I'm only a few blocks away, and they had massive fat wheels on the wheelchair. And I thought, wow, what a great idea. But gee, it looks harder to push. And she said, yeah, no, it is hard on the road, but on the beach, it's a breeze. And these people now can get down to the beach. The beach. Lucky I'm a professional speaker. Boy, oh boy. So now these people that hadn't been able to feel their sand between the toes because no one could, carry their big, heavy body weights down to the beach are now able to enjoy it. So now I'm waiting to see the entrepreneur that picks up and creates the hover wheelchairs. So they're not limited and they can go absolutely anywhere and everywhere. So one of the questions that a listener, and if you're wanting to ask the question, you're listening to Until Now with Rosie Pekar, the Aussie who does speak too fast. I'm also known as a professional butt kicker because I accept no bloody useless thoughts. That's what butt means, in order to get what it is, what we say we want, which includes for myself. And that's what I'm sharing the experiences today of my own recent dilemmas and how I was able to kick butt in my own brain. And you can join the live chat on W4CY Radio. Just click on the link at the right. And one of the questions I've been asked is it easy to project things are fine when they really are not? Well, it is a learned state, because we're learned to talk about how life is. And I was in the habit, when I started doing this program, of drawing a card from the Abraham Hicks Book of Wisdom. And each time I draw a card, it's my focus for what I intend to talk about through the program. And the one that I drew today, it's always been perfect, but I laughed at today's because I thought it truly is perfect. And the key statement on it is, the story I tell is the basis of my life. And that is perfect. We are in habits, when we talk to people, to tell the story of our lives, not as we want it to be, but as how it has been. And the past is not a predictor of the future, unless, of course, nothing changes, in which case then the past is a really good indicator of what's up and coming in the future. So the story I tell is the basis of my life. I get to select what story I tell, and it takes some unlearning or relearning to develop the ability to tell the story of where you are going, where you want to go, those intentions, those ideals, rather than where you've been. Like, I had worn for the longest period in my life the Queen of Adversity crown, and that's what I was called in for a lot of inspirational stories. However, I realized as I continued to tell these stories of dilemma, of difficulty, of challenge, that they all went, oh, wow, aren't you amazing? You've gone through this and been through that and experienced this. And the more you tell it in minute detail, and the more you relive it and re-feel it, the more moments of your life are spent in angst, difficulty, and dilemma. Now, that is the currency of my life. That has greater value than the money that we are seeking to spend in our life. This is the currency that I'm actually spending. This is the value that I'm spending. Those moments, they all matter. So the story I tell is the basis of my life, so I can select a better story at any moment in time. I get to pick. So what I do is I become a selective sifter. So instead of, because I'm not ready to throw the whole baby out with the bathwater, as we say, I'm not ready to let go of all the problems in their entirety. What I do is I take a tad of them, a little sliver of it, and I bring it across. So I will minimize, like I did earlier. I mentioned about, a couple of close friends dying last year. That's it in brevity. It's not, the whole story of how it went on, how it impacted, the feelings and the involvement. It's the same brevity that I give now to backdrop people. Problems that come in, things that go lost, things that have been unfair or unjust that we've experienced, that we've then had to pursue and follow through to a different conclusion. Again, brevity for unwanted, minimize for unwanted, keep it short and sweet for unwanted. And that's the key, sweetening up what has been. And, the best part of some relationships is the fact that they ended. That's my sweet spot on it. That's how I look back on it. When I have a difficulty or dilemma, with a partner who is no longer my partner, I remind myself that is the reason why you are no longer my partner. I keep having these expectations, as we all do. We project onto other people how we think things should be, how people should behave, how people should act. And we base it on how we act and how we live our lives. And I have an attachment and get caught up on issues to do with fairness. So when something I deem to not be fair, I'm in there with all guns blazing. And this has been my learning of how to let it fade to back, how to let those backdrop people go back to back. I don't have to put them center stage. I don't have to jump on my soapbox. I don't have to be yelling and screaming at them how unjust or incorrect or wrong I deem them to be, because that takes away from my ideals, those intentions that I've set of the direction of my life, the quality of my life, the value of my life, which included the peace, the serenity, the stability, the ease, the security, the well-being. So once we take time out in our lives and we actually determine this is my value for my life, and I would say to you today, spend time and think, what is my top 5 values for life, the most important things for me to be experiencing and feeling and enjoying on a daily basis? What is that top 5? For some it's passion and it's love, it's adoration. It can be any, flick through the dictionary, even on Google, some values, and see what ones inspire you, that grab your eye. For me, well-being is really important, because without my health and my vitality, everything else runs downwards. So for me, it's important, and for my young son, I'm all he has, so it's important that I maintain my emotional, my mental, and my physical well-being. That's my number 1 priority, being well. On top of being well is then my peace, because as I have peace, I discover it creeps and sneaks in every other area of your life. It's like drama will sneak into every other area of your life. You might think, oh, that drama is just happening here in the workplace, but all of a sudden then you're talking about it with your friends after work, so it's snuck into your social life. Then all of a sudden you're talking about, at home, then you're bringing it everywhere with you. This inner self is with us all the time, and this inner self we fuel with what we value, and we determine what we value by what we spend the most amount of time on. So again, it's not those things outside of ourselves. It's not, purchases we can make that are going to make us feel good. It's not about, getting a boob job or a nose job. It's not about, that flash car or, flashy ring, or it's not about any of that stuff, because that will be temporary. What has permanence is what we build upon on the inside. And I wish many more people would spend more time on their internals than their externals. And I'm going to love to see that TV show when it's done on, instead of, Married at First Sight, Love at First Sight, to do with, a person developing their true love of self, not an arrogant love of self, but a true love of self. Now, we've seen on social media, it has a way to get to people, to influence people to make positive change, but also a lot of cyberbullying and cyber attacking. And people don't even know each other, and they're ready to condemn and to challenge. Now, again, I would call those people backdrop people. They haven't got anything else happening on in their lives, that somehow a person that they don't even know, they've all of a sudden made them center stage and giving them all their attention. If you allow them that space of center stage, they will take it up. There's an easy answer: delete, remove, unfriend. If it happens to be in our neighborhood, it's our next door neighbor and we're having conflict and antagonism there, stop feeding into the energy. If you stop feeding it, it will eventually wither away and shrivel and die. And when you stop feeding it, you replace it with a new behavior. You choose to feed something else, and that something else is generally the opposite to what was feeding the problem. So it might be that you are now feeding peace. You are now feeding solitude. You are now feeding entertaining, and focusing on what you are more passionate about, which doesn't include your neighbours, for example, in using that same analogy. So for ourselves, it's always about refocusing and finding that value. But if we don't know what those values are, we don't pay attention to reset, and we get caught up and hijacked in the moment. And, there's an expression about, what type of flyer are you in life? You can be the pilot, you can be the passenger, or you can be the hijacker. So, for example, I've met many different people, and I choose in this life to be the pilot in my life. I choose my directions of where I'm. It's not going to be a surprise where I end up. I plan for it. I've intended it, and I've talked about it, and I share my focus of it. So the story I tell is the basis for my life. And it continues to be as I help others for their lives. This will be the best investment you can ever make within your own life, is to take the time out to think, what is my most important values, and are these actions? Because if you keep them nearby, stuck up near your computer, near your mirror first thing in the morning, in places where you get to see it, it's a reminder to your new direction, your new focus, your pivotal point in now. And as you have these reminders ready in your wallet, as you open up your wallet, when you are caught up in moments, you are readily reminding yourself, not my circus, not my monkeys. This is a backdrop person. They belong in the back, not center stage. My center stage is my ideal. My ideal is ease. My ideal is well-being. My ideal is security. My ideal is enjoyment. Whatever you've made your top 5. Now, when you do this in the beginning, you might write out 30 different values, but then it becomes the pointy end because you've got to start, checking off which is your most important, that you really could not live your life without having. So that's the most important. Now, I'm going to share what was written on Esther's card that says, the story I tell is the basis of my life as my point of focus. And this is what, and for those that are unaware, Abraham is a channeled group of energies by Esther Hicks. There is no right or wrong way to tell your improved story. It can be about your past, present, or future experiences. The only criterion that is important is that you be conscious of your intent to tell a better feeling, improved version of your story. Telling many good feeling short stories throughout your day will change your point of attraction. Just remember that the story you tell is the basis of your life. So tell it the way you want it to be. So that's what I challenge you to do, as I've challenged myself to do. And it's easy when things are easy. It's when you've got challenging moments is where you get to test your ability to master this new skill. However, if you haven't set your ideals, it's going to be a bit more difficult than you anticipate. So until next week, you've been listening to Until Now with Rosie Pekar. If you want more insight, go to www.kickbutt.com. Otherwise, you go somewhere else.com.au, because I am Australian, and there's loads more there that you can get for free compliments of me. Talk to you next week.